Hello, and welcome to More Intelligent Tomorrow, a wide-ranging exploration of the potential impact of AI on the world around us, as envisioned by the future heroes of the human and machine intelligence revolution. Can AI save the American dream? We'll discuss this and more with Brock Blake on today's episode. And now, your host, Ben Taylor.
Brock Blake, CEO of Lendio. I'm excited to talk to you today. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, Ben, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I want to ask you, why are startups so easy? Lendio was really easy, wasn't it?
Yeah, right.
You made all the right decisions right out of school. Let's talk about let's talk about the hard things about a startup and the easy things. What are some of the easy things about a startup? Maybe there aren't any.
That's a short list.
A short list.
There's not a lot of easy things except for failing, I guess. Making bad decisions and making mistakes and all of that seems to become easy. But generally, being an entrepreneur and building a business and a startup is very challenging, and it's about endurance and being persistent and fighting kind of every single day to live another day. And so I wouldn't say there's much about it that is easy.
One of the things I appreciate about the business that you guys are doing at Lendio is you have a pretty good pulse on the economy right now with COVID and what that's done with the stimulus package. Maybe speak to that. How has COVID impacted the small businesses in the U.S.?
Oh man, it's definitely it's polarized. In other words, you've got both ends of the spectrum. There are a lot of businesses that are struggling, many that have closed their doors, many more that probably will. Hopefully not permanently, but I'm afraid that will be the case with just far too many. On the other hand, though, there are quite a few small businesses that have never had have never had it better from a financial perspective. Where like the construction industry, so many of us kind of locked up at home and in work from home quarantine situations, we start to see, a leak in the shower or something that we don't like this or that, and we want to get it fixed. And so a lot of home remodels and home repair and other kind of pet projects that are happening, and some of the larger businesses that are retail, like the Walmarts and Amazons, obviously are having record quarters, but that isn't a reflection of small business in Main Street. And so but I guess the other industries that are doing quite well are the like the recreation, the outdoor recreation, the RVs, the mountain bikes, the boat industry did really well. And so it's just been this really polar opposites to see what's happening in the economy through all of this.
Yeah, it's so strange that way because it's almost the exact opposite of 2008. So 2008 really hurt anyone who was building, and now with this recession that we're going through with COVID, lumber's triple the price, and everyone's doing
Yep.
remodeling. It's just the complete opposite.
Yeah, it is so interesting. When we were going through some of our fundraising discussions, they would always ask about, what do you think is going to happen in the next recession, and every time the modeling and the analysis was basically trying to model exactly what happened in 2008. And to your point, I mean, I kept saying every recession is so different. You can't just assume that basically what we learned in 2008 is going to help us for the next recession. So it's not going to be the same recession. And I'm not trying to come across like, oh yeah, I knew it or anything like that, but just recessions, the characteristics of them are so unique and so different, and they affect the economy and our lifestyle in such different and desperate ways that it's hard to predict.
Yeah, definitely. And to kind of move away from COVID for a second, has it been so it's been really satisfying for you to see your business grow and to get, see these teams and these employees get added to your business. Has it also been encouraging to see the life changes that you're able to do for your customers, the customers that can secure loans easier or get better rates? Do you have some of those stories that you can share with customers that have impacted you?
No question. Candidly, that is what drives everything we do, is our customers. And during this time, mid March, we had the lenders stop lending. Where we were high flying and we were growing quarter over quarter, and then overnight lenders stopped lending, and rightfully so. They couldn't predict or accurately kind of assess risk, because they didn't know which businesses were in business and which ones were closed, and so on. And the world changed, and every business owner in America was in a desperate kind of need for capital, and we changed our mission from fueling the American dream to saving the American dream, because we felt the immensity of the moment and this pressure and this demand for capital, and that to keep their business open. And there were so many of those stories, and I'll give you a couple, but let me just say that there were so many stories that were very, very personal to not to me, but to each member of our team. When every member of our team, when their siblings who owned a business, knew they worked at Lendio, they came and asked for help. When their neighbors, their people from high school or college, or from their church congregation or their community or whatever, everyone had all of these individuals that reached out to them individually, kind of desperately asking for help to get a PPP loan. But some of the stories that I'll share, one story is that came from some of these that are non-personal. We had a restaurant down in San Antonio, Texas. The owner's name is Dave Saylor, and he was just this amazing man who takes their leftovers kind of from the restaurant every single night and gives it away to the homeless. And he's got this kind of refuge, path that he helps people in his community. And he's got this incredible relationship with the community that all know who he is and his name. And he's just this person you can tell gives back. And he reached out to us and was in a very difficult spot. His bank wasn't offering PPP loans, and not only was it going to affect this fairly large restaurant. I mean, he has 75 employees, and he was going to have to do layoffs. But he, it was going to the rippling effect that it would have on that community because of the good that he does in that community would have been significant as well. And so for us to be able to help him get that PPP loan, and he sent us this video of his story and told us about, how much it helped him and how grateful he was. And, those types of things, that's where it becomes incredible, is when it's not just a number, it's not just a loan, it is the life of an individual and the lives of his team members and the community that he's impacting. And so, we could tell you story after story of how we've been able to help these business owners and to keep their doors open.
That's so powerful, because you're not running a company to work on the next Snapchat filter to to kind of consume the attention of the teenagers for worse, but you're working on something that actually changes real lives with real stories.
I had a moment during this whole PPP thing where I was basically in fetal position on the floor, like wondering if we were going to make it through. I've had moments where, early on we had 8 employees, and it was the payroll before Christmas, and we ran out of money and I couldn't make payroll. And, where I, had to ask people to work without pay. And we've had moments where I was for sure confident that we weren't going to make it through whatever that challenge was, that we weren't going to be able to manage cash, where we've kind of made it by the hair on our chin, just barely by a thread made it through difficult times. So
how do you persist? Like when you're dealing with that vice, how do you persist? How do you make it through?
Well, we had a moment. I'll just tell my most recent one. We had a moment during all this PPP where there was a very large set of customers that had been approved for a PPP loan, and I wasn't sure if the lender was going to actually be able to fund the loans. And I got some news, and I can't give all the details, but and this was like $2.5 billion worth. And so I got this news one night late, and it was just devastating to me, because of not only all of the lives of the individuals, and so many of those individuals were, again, all of our friends and family and others, but so many more, thousands and thousands of business owners that I was worried we were going to let down. And then how was that going to impact all of our team members? Would they lose hope? And would we be able to, how would that, impact Lendio and our brand? And, would there be negative press? And, you start going through and thinking about, my wife knew I was devastated. She knew I was completely sick to my stomach, and I was on the floor. Not because I was necessarily on the floor crying at that moment, but I was just on the floor kind of just taking it in, laying on my back. And the more I thought about it, the more pressure I felt and the more emotional I got. Just feeling, the weight of the world on my shoulders. So a couple things happened. The first thing is that I have an amazing wife, and she went to my family, and we're people of faith, and asked all of my family to pray for me, and some of them even chose to fast, and I started getting text messages kind of flooding in saying, hey, I'm not sure what you're going through, but I want you to know that we're praying for you. So you start to realize, hey, I'm not in this alone. I reached out to my team and my board, and kind of giving them the news, and now you have this circle of trust that you can depend on. The second thing and so that was extremely helpful to kind of pick me up off the ground.
Yeah.
Then the second thing is that I'm, as an entrepreneur, everyone has different traits and skills and weaknesses or whatever. But one of the things that, people have talked about as my strength is this ability to see around corners and be strategic and fit pieces together and solve problems. And I'm an eternal optimist. So to be able to kind of take that moment, and now as soon as I get over from feeling sorry for myself, and I start focusing on what is the problem and how do I solve it, then all of a sudden I get invigorated again, and I get excited, and I start thinking, and okay, if I piece A plus B and C together, I think we could solve this thing. And I get into solution mode, and that's where I don't panic, honestly, but we just start attacking the problem, and that's where it starts to become fulfilling and more exciting again.
So one of the things I wanted to make sure I asked you is, how do you balance the stress and load of the business and the responsibilities of being a father and a husband? Because this is a sore spot for a lot of CEOs. They can't balance the two.
Well, this has been a priority of mine from early on in my career, and it's not something I want to say like that I'm expert at, but it is something I'm passionate about. Early on, as we were actually raising money, and we had a term sheet from a prolific venture investor from the Bay Area, and we were about to accept the term sheet, and he flew into town, and we were out to lunch, and he was asking me about my life outside of work, and and at the time we had a son and a daughter, and I talked about how important they were to me, and he said, well, talk to me about the priority of your family compared to work. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He said, well, in my history with the CEOs that I've worked with, I have really found that 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 you either are a successful CEO or you are a successful father, husband or father. But it's really, really challenging. I've never seen anyone kind of do both. They kind of have to choose one or the other. And if for you, which one would you choose? And he's like, you can't do both. And I was like, in that moment, it just made me sick and just angry. And I was a young entrepreneur, and I was thinking, can you not do both? Do I have to choose? So in that moment, I had this. I first of all knew that he wasn't the right partner. We decided after he left that we were not going to accept the term sheet. But secondly, I kind of just said I'm going to dedicate my career as an entrepreneur. Like I am going to set it out to prove that you can be a successful father, husband, and father, and a successful CEO, and be great at both. And I'm confident I haven't hit that milestone yet, but I'm very passionate about it. And it's really just it is a matter of like what are priorities? How do you make time? And so, so there's other things you have to sacrifice, but other personal pursuits or other things that may take up your time. But it is a priority for me to be able to spend time with each of my kids, and to be able to have a date night with my wife on Friday nights, and to be able to do those things and involve them in the company. It is a challenge, no question. We also go on regular family vacations, and but not, I have to work when I'm there. I'll wake up early and I'll work in the mornings and then spend the afternoons with my family. But do those things that you have to sacrifice and you have to work at it, but to try and not only manage your schedule at the office, but also with your wife and kids.
And I think that's really good advice. Actually, taking those vacations, because I think a lot of CEOs, they just don't understand how that would be possible. What do you think about when you think about a more intelligent tomorrow? What are the future technologies that your kids need to be thinking about, or that you need to be looking to with your business? What's lending going to be like 10 years from now?
Well, there will be lending in the future will be, every there you'll have access to capital, because the capital is basically monitoring your financials, and you'll always know exactly how much money you're qualified for, whether that is a mortgage, a car payment, or a business loan. The data will become so ubiquitous, and it'll be available that you'll always be able. It's called, in my opinion, an always on application. I'll always be able to see, okay, at this moment I'm eligible for $100,000 loan. I can draw on it at any time. But as your credit score decreases, your eligibility might decrease, or as it increases or whatever, it may increase. But it'll be kind of ever present, and you won't have to go through what is traditionally known as an application process today. Like today, I want to go buy a car. Okay, I need to go out and fill out that application. I need to submit it. They need to go through a bunch of these credit checks and things like that. That won't be the case in the future. But I sure hope that one of the things that I hope for the future, and it doesn't have anything to do with technology, honestly, is I hope that when the vaccine comes and we're out of this pandemic, that there will still be the personal relationships. That I as much as I love doing everything over Zoom and everything else, the personal relationships that come by being in person and being able to give someone a hug, and be able to build a relationship of trust, and have personal experiences together, and all those things. That's actually the part of life that I hope doesn't get replaced, and that we can get back to, and that's not replaced by all this technology that exists today.
Yeah, there's definitely something very human about a handshake or a conversation over dinner compared to Zoom,
Yep.
where it's only as much as it is. Well, Brock, I really appreciate your time. I've had a lot of value out of this, and I've had chat coming through our video team. You delivered a lot of really good content for our listeners and for young entrepreneurs as they think about this journey. So I really appreciate you being on.
My pleasure. This has been a fun conversation. I've enjoyed it, and appreciate you having me on.
Okay, man. I don't want to make you late for your date night.
That's right. It is Friday night date night. Let's go.